Welcome, cozy knights. Lower your swords, set down your potions, and rest by the fire for a while. Tonight we are going somewhere very familiar. We are going back to Skyrim. Not to fight dragons, not to climb 7,000 steps, not to clear out one more bandit camp at midnight because you couldn't sleep. We are going to settle in and look at the parts of Skyrim that most people walk right past. The secrets tucked into the corners, the little winks from the developers, the hidden stories that are just sitting there waiting for someone patient enough to find them, 140 of them to be exact. Skyrim was released on the 11th of November 2011. Over 14 years later, people are still finding things in it. That should tell you something. This is a world with layers upon layers, and the deeper you go, the quieter it gets, and the more interesting things become. So settle in, get comfortable. The fire is warm, the snow is falling outside, and there is nowhere you need to be tonight except right here. Section 1. The Bones Beneath the Ground. Ancient Secrets, Prehistoric Mysteries, and the Things Hidden in Stone. Let us begin at the very foundations of the world. Before the Dragonborn showed up, before Ulfric Stormcloak started his war, before the College of Winterhold was even built, there were things buried in this land. And if you know where to look, you can find them. Easter egg number 1. The snow whale bones of Kagrenzel. Deep within the Dwemer ruin of Kagrenzel, there is a trap. Most players know this. You walk into an empty room, a glowing orb hangs suspended in the air, and the moment you touch it or even stand on the platform beneath it, the floor gives way. You plunge. You fall a very long way through darkness, and as you fall, if you look up or if you look at the cavern walls rushing past you, you will see enormous skeletal remains embedded in the rock. Ribs mostly? Enormous sweeping curves of ancient bone, far larger than any mammoth, far larger than anything you have encountered at the surface. According to Nordic folklore preserved in various texts scattered across the game, snow whales once lived at the peaks of Skyrim's highest mountains. These were flying creatures, vast and luminous, that sang in tones that resonated across the frozen heights. They belonged to an era so old it barely has a name, a period called the Merethic Era, when the world was still finding its shape. The bones inside Kagrenzel are almost certainly theirs. The Dwemer would have been very interested in creatures that navigated the world through sound, given that their own tonal architecture relied on resonance and vibration to manipulate reality itself. The idea that they may have studied these animals, or hunted them for their sonic abilities, adds a dimension to the Dwemer that most of their cold bronze corridors don't suggest. What makes this particular Easter egg so special is how passive it is. You don't get a quest marker, you don't get a journal entry. You fall, you glimpse something impossible, and then you land in water and catch your breath. The game never explains what you saw, it just trusts that you were paying attention. Easter egg number 2. The frozen mammoth and Dwemer tools. Travel northeast from Alftand, up into the glacial terrain above Sarthal. Out there, partially encased in a wall of blue-white ice, you will find a mammoth. Not a living one, not a skeleton. An actual preserved mammoth, frozen mid-stride, its hide still intact, its tusks still gleaming faintly through the ice. And if you look closely, lodged into its hide, buried in its frozen flanks, you will find dwarven spears and arrows, multiple of them, a hunting tableau, preserved perfectly for thousands of years. This is a gentle reference to real-world discoveries of frozen woolly mammoths in Siberia. Scientists have found remarkably preserved specimens in permafrost, and some of those specimens have had human-made tools embedded in their remains, evidence of prehistoric hunting. Bethesda's artists recreated that eerie quality exactly. The mammoth isn't dramatic about it, it's just there. A creature that was alive when the Dwemer were alive, hunted by them, frozen in place, and completely forgotten until you stumble across it while wandering the northern wastes. You can actually climb up onto its back, which yields a unique two-handed weapon lodged in the frozen flesh. But honestly, the reward is secondary. The scene itself is the treasure. Easter egg number 3. The Sleeping Dragon of Blackreach. Blackreach is already one of the most extraordinary locations in any game ever made. A subterranean cavern the size of a city, illuminated by bioluminescent mushrooms, filled with dwarven architecture and the distant sounds of Falmer moving through the dark. Most players who go there go for the Elder Scroll. They follow the quest markers, they do what needs doing, and they leave. They miss Volthuriel, almost completely. High above the center of Blackreach, in the Silent City, there is a large yellow orb suspended in the air. It looks like a decorative element. It looks like part of the Dwemer architecture, which it is. But it is also a bell, a gong. And if you use the unrelenting force shout on it, the sound it produces, that deep, resonant ring echoing through the cavern, will summon something, a dragon. An ancient dragon, level 50, covered in dark metallic scales, bearing the name Volthurial, which in the dragon language means dark overlord fire. He has been living down there in the underground dark, for reasons no scholar in Tamriel seems to understand. A creature of the sky, beneath the earth, sleeping in the ruins of a civilization that has been gone for ages. There is no quest attached to this, no reward except his soul. The game does not tell you to shout at the orb. You have to figure it out, or hear it from someone else, or be the kind of person who shouts at everything just to see what happens. Bethesda put a dragon underground in a place you had to specifically seek out and then perform an unrewarded action to encounter. That is confidence in your player base. Easter egg number 4, the 7 beds of Blackreach. Still in Blackreach, still underground. Head into the war quarters, a section of the Dwemer ruins tucked into the cavern's lower reaches. Past the Falmer and through corridors that still hum with the vibration of machinery that has been running for 3,000 years, you will find a specific sleeping chamber. 7 small beds, arranged in a semicircle. Small beds, not human-sized beds, dwarven beds, sized for shorter frames. And across the hallway from them, a larger bed. A double bed for someone of greater standing. Bethesda's developers, quietly and without announcement, built Snow White and the 7 dwarfs into the ruins of an ancient civilization. They didn't comment on it. There is no note, no book, no inscription pointing to it. It is just there. A sleeping chamber for 7 Dwemer laborers, with a grander room across the way for whoever dwelled among them with a bit more privilege. Whether the Dwemer Snow White would have been kind or cruel is left entirely to your imagination. Easter egg number 5, the Iceberg Night of the Nine. Northeast of the Tower Stone, out in the cold sea to the north of Skyrim, there is a small island made almost entirely of ice. It slopes upward at a constant angle, unmarked on your map, unreachable by any road. Reaching it requires swimming through freezing water or using whirlwind sprint from a certain angle. At the very top of this ice formation planted in the frozen surface is a flag. Beside the flag is a chest, and lying near the chest is the skeleton of a warrior. The chest contains loot, as chests do. But it also contains a book, a very specific book, titled The Knights of the Nine. This is a history of a knightly order from an Oblivion DLC of the same name. The implication is that this warrior, this unnamed skeleton on a forgotten icy peak, was a member of that order. A hero from a previous era, from a previous game, who found their way to the most remote and unreachable place in Skyrim and died there, perhaps still searching for something, perhaps finally at rest. Most players never find this. It requires going somewhere that serves no gameplay purpose. The reward is minimal. The story it tells, though, if you are the kind of person who connects those dots, is quietly extraordinary. Easter egg number 6, the haunted mines of Kagranzel's Echo. Returning briefly to Kagranzel, there is a detail most people miss even when they do find the bones. The chamber where you fall is not entirely silent. At certain angles, at certain times, you can hear a deep and unidentifiable rumbling from far beneath you in the cavern walls. A resonance that does not quite match any natural geological sound. Given the established lore about Dwemer tonal architecture, the idea that this sound is the echo of ancient experiments, sound-based engineering that has been reverberating through the mountain for millennia, is not speculation so much as it is the only logical conclusion. Kagrenzel keeps talking to itself. Nobody is listening. Easter egg number 7, the Lady of the Lake. Northeast of Bleakwind Basin, in the landscape of Whiterun Hold, you will come across a small pool. Nothing marks it. Nothing draws your eye to it except its stillness and the surrounding wilderness. Protruding from the center of this pool, rising from the water at a slight angle, is a skeletal arm. A human arm, bones gleaming beneath the water's surface. And in the hand, gripped by fingers that have not moved in a very long time, is a sword. Nearby, the Lady Stone sits on a small island in the middle of another lake. These are 2 deliberate references to the Lady of the Lake from Arthurian legend, the supernatural figure who gifts Excalibur to Arthur from beneath the water. The skeletal version, the arm that's just bones now and has clearly been waiting for a very long time, has a particular kind of melancholy to it. The game is not making fun of the reference. It's presenting it with total sincerity. Here is an arm in a lake, here is a sword. Do with that what you will. Easter egg number 8, the sword and the stone. In case the lady in the lake was too subtle, Skyrim also has a literal sword in a stone. Just outside of Rebel's Cairn, northwest of Rorikstead, there is a sword lodged into a pile of rocks in an empty field. You can pull it out. It doesn't make you king. It gives you a leveled sword and a small amount of satisfaction. But the placement is deliberate, the composition is deliberate, and the developers clearly decided that if you were going to do one Arthurian reference, you might as well do both. Easter egg number 9, the Assassin's Creed Archway. At Bard's Leap Summit in the Reach, there is a wooden platform extending over the edge of a massive waterfall, high above the river below. The platform is used for a specific Easter egg we will return to. But to get there, you pass through a stone archway. And if you look at that archway from the right angle, from below, and slightly to the side, its shape traces the outline of the Assassin's Creed insignia almost exactly. The same stylized eagle wing shape, the same angular lines. Bethesda hid one game's symbol inside another game's geometry, in a place you would only notice if you looked at the environment from exactly the angle a hidden blade would encourage you to. Easter egg number 10, the Dead Man's Treasure. On a large island northeast of the wreck of the Winter War, out in the Sea of Ghosts, you will find a raised flag planted in the ice. Around it, carefully arranged, is a pile of gold ingots. No chest, no bag, no container of any kind. Just gold sitting in the snow beside a flag and a skeleton. The skeleton is carrying a pickpocket skill book, which adds to the story the game is quietly telling. Someone worked very hard to get all of this gold, did not live to spend it, and nobody ever came to claim it. It has just been sitting there in the frozen sea north of Skyrim waiting. Easter egg number 11, the Wuthering Heights Farmstead. Northwest of the Throat of the World, in the wilds of Falkreath Hold, there is an unmarked farmstead, a farmhouse, some chickens, a couple of NPCs living a quiet existence. The place is called Golden Glow Estate by the nearby map markers, but I am referring to a smaller, more specific location, a cottage arrangement in the region where two characters named Hild and her family simply exist. Their names and the arrangement of the property closely match the setting and characters from Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights. It is subtle enough that it might be coincidence. It is deliberate enough that it probably isn't. Easter egg number 12, the Indiana Jones Spike Trap. In Geirmund's Hall, a Nordic tomb in the Rift, there is a hallway with pressure plate activated spikes, wooden spikes on arm mechanisms that swing down from the ceiling when you step on the wrong floor tiles. This is a common dungeon hazard in Skyrim, but in this particular configuration, in this particular hall, the arrangement is lifted almost directly from the iconic Boulder Trap corridor in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Players who sprinted through this section many times might have never noticed that they were essentially recreating Harrison Ford's opening run from 1981, just with slightly less dramatic lighting. Easter egg number 13, the Shattered Mirror of Forelhost. Forelhost is not a gentle place. It is the site of the Dragon Cult's last stand, a monastery sealed after a mass suicide that ended the cult's organized existence in the First Era. But inside, beyond the tragedy of the place, there is a specific room containing an intact mirror, a full-length mirror, standing upright, undamaged, in a ruin where everything else has decayed. Mirrors in Elder Scrolls games occasionally have metaphysical significance. This one reflects the room, reflects you, reflects the dust and the bones and the abandoned altars. It shouldn't still be perfect. It is. The game does not explain why. Easter egg number 14, the burned shack that never stops burning. Northeast of Ustengrav, in the marshlands of Hjalmark, there is a shack. A simple, small structure. It is on fire. Not dramatically on fire, not spectacularly collapsing. Just quietly, steadily burning. The previous occupant is still inside, continuously burning with the building. There is a Conjure Flame Paarthurnax scroll lying nearby, suggesting what might have started the fire. And the thing is, this shack never stops. It burns on your first visit. It burns when you come back a year later. Some accident of magic, some summoning gone wrong, has locked this tiny building in permanent immolation. Nobody knows it happened. Nobody is coming to put it out. Easter egg number 15, the graveyard that marks the edge of the world. East of Windhelm, near the border of Morrowind, there's a location called Dunmouth Pass. The road leading to it crosses through a small graveyard. Nordic markers, cold stone, old graves. The game will not let you continue very far past this graveyard. The border is there, invisible and absolute, but the graveyard marks it with something that reads like intention. The edge of the world Skyrim will let you inhabit is marked not by a wall or a mountain, but by a place where the dead are buried. As if the boundary between what you can see and what you cannot is already, in some way, a kind of ending. Easter egg number 16, the Mammoth Graveyard. West of Lorius Farm, in the Whiterun Plains, there is a shallow pit. In it, arranged without particular drama, are mammoth skeletons, several of them. Old bones, large and yellowed, resting in a natural depression in the earth. Near the fresh mammoth body that spawns here, 2 NPCs called poachers will be present. These are the only poachers in the entire game with that specific description. This is Bethesda's recreation of the concept of elephant graveyards. The folklore that large animals travel to specific places to die. Giants and mammoths share territory throughout Skyrim, and this place suggests something ceremonial, something instinctive and old in that relationship. The mammoths come here. They've always come here. If you are listening to this somewhere comfortable right now, I want to hear about it. Drop a comment below and let me know where you are and what time it is. Whether you are in your bed with headphones on or sitting somewhere quiet at the end of a long day, I love knowing you are here. And if this helps you drift off tonight, a subscribe means the world, truly. Now let's keep going. Section 2. The People Who Know Too Much. NPC secrets, hidden backstories, and the characters that reward a second look. Skyrim is populated by roughly 700 named characters. Most of them exist to give you quests, sell you things, or stand around in a way that makes cities feel inhabited. But some of them are hiding things. And if you pay close attention, if you talk to the right people and listen carefully and cast the right detection spells, you begin to realize that a number of Skyrim's most ordinary-seeming residents are not ordinary at all. Easter egg number 17, Sibyl Stentor, the Vampire Court Wizard. Walk into the Blue Palace in Solitude and introduce yourself to the court wizard. Sibyl Stentor is a Breton woman who looks about 35. She is polite, if cold. She will sell you spells and train you in destruction. She does not seem particularly remarkable. She is, in fact, one of the most extraordinary beings you will meet in the entire game. Sibyl Stentor has served the Jarls of Solitude for decades. Not one reign, multiple reigns. She served High King Toryg's father, Islad, before his son took the throne. She helped raise Toryg when he was a child. She speaks of past political events with the casual fluency of someone who is present for them, not someone who read about them. If you cast Detect Life in the Blue Palace, she does not register, but cast Detect Dead and she lights up. She is a vampire who has lived in the heart of Solitude's government for so long that even the castle's other occupants have simply stopped noticing. Her method of sustaining herself is implied rather than stated. The guards hint that prisoners in Castle Dour have a tendency to not survive their stays in the dungeon when Sibyl is having a bad day. One guard puts it particularly memorably. The headsman's axe, he says, may not be the worst way for a Solitude prisoner to die. She feeds on them. She always has. And the court knows it, and they say nothing, because she is simply too useful, too brilliant, too woven into the fabric of how the city operates to remove. This is a vampire who chose civilization over savagery, who built something resembling a normal life inside the political structure of a city that would destroy her if they understood her fully, and who has maintained that position through competence and discretion for longer than most Nord family lines have existed. Easter egg number 18, Babette, the 300-year-old child. The Dark Brotherhood Sanctuary in Falkreath has several unsettling residents. Cicero is obviously unsettling, Astrid is unsettling in a quieter way, but Babette, the small girl who tends the alchemy supplies and brews poisons for contracts, is perhaps the most unsettling of all, and the game lets you figure out why gradually. She looks 10 years old, she wears child's clothing. If you were not paying attention, you might assume she is a foundling, an orphan the Brotherhood took in. Then she talks to you. She tells you about her methods for extracting information from targets. She describes, with cheerful precision, how she uses her appearance to walk up to people who would never lower their guard around a small child and then kill them. She mentions, in a conversational tone, that she was bitten by a vampire when she was 10 years old, 300 years ago. Babette has been 10 for 300 years. She has watched assassins come and go, watched sanctuaries rise and fall, watched the Brotherhood collapse and rebuild in different forms. She has more operational experience than anyone else in that building. She talks to you with the patience of someone who has explained things to a great many Dragonborns before, and has a certain gentle condescension she doesn't bother hiding. She is, in a word, ancient. And she looks like she should be playing with dolls. Easter egg number 19. Cicero's Journals and the Road to Madness. You first meet Cicero on the road to Whiterun, pushing a broken cart, asking for help. He seems odd immediately. Talking too fast, gesturing too widely, eyes moving in directions that don't quite match the conversation. But his madness has a precise history, and it's all documented in journals hidden in his quarters at the sanctuary. Cicero was, at some point, a competent and effective assassin. He served in the Brotherhood's Cheydinhal chapter in Cyrodiil during the years when the organization was collapsing. One by one, his fellow assassins died or left. Contracts dried up, members drifted away, until Cicero was alone. Not just alone, but alone with the Night Mother's coffin, which he had sworn to protect, and with no other living members of the organization anywhere near him. He talked to the corpse because there was no one else to talk to, for years. Occasionally, she answered. By the time he reached Skyrim, he had been alone with a dead body for longer than most people can imagine. His jester's costume, his theatrical manner, his tendency to break into song, these are not the affectations of someone who started out eccentric. They are the adaptive behaviors of someone whose mind rebuilt itself around isolation and devotion in the only directions those materials allowed. He is not an interesting villain. He is a tragic figure who never got to stop. Easter egg number 20. Hurt at the Half Moon Mill. On the road between Falkreath and Riverwood, near the Silverblood Inn, there is a lumber mill called the Half Moon Mill. It is run by a woman named Hurt and her husband Hearn. They are friendly, as NPCs go. They will buy lumber, they will exchange pleasantries. They seem like a quiet couple, making their living in a quiet place. They are vampires, both of them. The Half Moon Mill sits in a location that gets steady foot traffic from travelers, and Hurt and Hearn have been quietly feeding on those travelers, selecting ones who won't be missed for a very long time. If you go behind their house and explore the surrounding area, you will find evidence of this, bodies or what remains of them. Bones arranged with the particular carelessness of remains that were not given any ceremony. Like the Sibyl situation, the Detect Life spell does not register them, but the Detect Dead spell does. Their eyes glow faintly in certain lighting. The mill at night has a quality that is hard to name, that feeling of something being not quite right in a way you can't immediately identify. They are protected by the game under most normal circumstances. They are hard to provoke into combat. They just exist, doing their business, on a road you travel many times. Easter egg number 21. The Mournful Giant near Broken Tower Redoubt. Not all of Skyrim's hidden character stories are about danger. Some are about grief. Southwest of Whiterun, in the Reach, near a location called Broken Tower Redoubt, you will find a giant, just standing there, not tending a camp, not herding mammoths, standing vigil over the corpse of a dead mammoth, enormous and still on the grass beside him. The giant will not attack you. He will not even look at you unless you provoke him. He is simply grieving. Giants and mammoths move together across the Skyrim plains in a relationship that has always suggested something deeper than cattle herding. They recognize each other individually. They sleep near each other. And when one of them dies, at least in this case, the other will simply stand, waiting, not understanding quite what to do with loss, but not leaving either. The giant circles the mammoth periodically. He has probably been there since it died. If you come back days later, he may still be there, or he may return. There is no quest here, no reward. The game didn't flag this for any journal entry. This is just a giant, in the grass, standing beside the body of his friend. Easter egg number 22. Heimskr was once a scholar. The man preaching about Talos in Whiterun's market district is, objectively, deeply irritating. He shouts. He repeats himself. He has the cadence of someone who has been speaking to people who are not listening for so long that volume has become a strategy. Most players either ignore him or murder him with increasing frustration. But Heimskr was not always a street preacher. Before the White Gold Concordat banned Talos worship and made his research into Nordic theology politically toxic, he was a respected academic whose conclusions, carefully reached through legitimate scholarship, pointed to the metaphysical necessity of Talos's place in the divine order. He believed it would matter. He believed the truth would persuade people. It didn't. Years of being dismissed and mocked and threatened by Thalmor agents gradually stripped away his academic restraint, and what replaced it was volume and repetition, the desperate tools of someone who has run out of better options. His sermons, if you actually listen to them, are theologically sophisticated. The problem is the delivery, and the delivery problem is not a personal failing so much as the byproduct of watching the thing you believe in most become illegal. Easter egg number 23. Calixto's Museum and Isgrimor's Soup Spoon. In Windhelm, Calixto Corium runs the House of Curiosities, a small museum where you can pay a few septims to see his collection of unusual objects. Calixto himself turns out to be a serial killer, which somewhat overshadows the exhibits, but the exhibits themselves are worth attention before the quest goes dark. Among the items on display is a utensil labeled Isgrimor's Soup Spoon. Isgramr is one of the most legendary figures in Nordic history, the leader who brought the 500 companions to Skyrim and drove the snow elves back. He is commemorated everywhere. He has an enormous axe named after him. Calixto's explanation for the soup spoon, delivered with absolute deadpan confidence to anyone who pays admission, is simply, "Well, my friend, you did not know Isgrimor." The soup spoon is actually a fork. The game is aware that it is a fork. Calixto is aware that it is a fork. Nobody comments on this because the admission fee is already paid, and what are you going to do? Ask for a refund from the man who will later turn out to have been murdering people. Easter egg number 24. Drifa the Embezzler. In the marketplace of Windhelm, Drifa runs a stall near the city square. She is unremarkable in conversation, but if you search her home, you will find skooma beneath her bed. A controlled and addictive substance that she has been hiding from her husband, and if you listen to the background dialogue in the household, her husband mentions suspicious discrepancies in their shop's finances, money that cannot be accounted for. Drifa has a skooma habit, and she is funding it by stealing from the business she runs with her spouse, and neither of them will acknowledge this out loud, and the city around them will never know. Bethesda wrote a complete story of marital dysfunction and substance dependency into the background of a marketplace character who has maybe 4 lines of dialogue. You have to assemble the pieces yourself. The game trusts that some players will. Easter egg number 25. The Shawshank Redemption in Sidna Mine. In Markarth, if you end up in the Sidna Mine prison, you will encounter a forsworn prisoner named Borkul the Beast. Among the things you can do to get past him is distract him with a written note. But what is more interesting, in a broader sense, is that the entire arc of the Sidna Mine quest, the false imprisonment, the escape through a passage dug over years, the redemption story waiting on the other side, is a direct homage to the Shawshank Redemption. The mine functions as Shawshank State Penitentiary, with its power structure, its corrupted authority, and its secret tunnel dug by someone who refused to accept that this was simply how things would be. The developers at Bethesda were clearly fans. The scenario maps almost beat for beat to the film's emotional architecture, and it is one of the most thoughtfully constructed optional quest lines in the game. Easter egg number 26. Mike the Liar's Holding Cell. Mike the Liar, the wandering Khajiit who has appeared in every Elder Scrolls game and comments on the game's mechanics and missing features, has a secret that only PC players can find. He has his own dedicated holding cell, separate from the dead body cleanup cell we will visit later. If you type cock elsewhere into the PC console, you will teleport to Mike's personal off-screen waiting room. While every other NPC in the game queues up in the grim purple and green death room when they're not needed, Mike has his own pocket of elsewhere, the Khajiiti homeland, to relax in. Even the game's most meta character gets preferential treatment. Easter egg number 27. Septimus Cygnus and the Orrery of Obsession. Far north of Skyrim, in a glacier outpost that takes deliberate effort to reach, lives Septimus Cygnus. He is the only scholar who has managed to partially decode the Dwemer lexicon device, a transcription machine of extraordinary sophistication. He has been out here alone, in the cold, for long enough that his grip on conventional sanity has loosened somewhat. He talks to the box. He hears it talk back, in a way. He believes he is close to something vast. What Bethesda captured in Septimus is the specific texture of intellectual obsession taken past its sustaining point. He is not stupid, he is brilliant. But he has been alone with a single problem for so long that the problem has become everything, and he himself has become secondary to it. His quest line ends with his dissolution when he finally understands what he's been reaching toward. The lexicon, it turns out, was always bigger than one man's ability to contain. Easter egg number 28. Ferengar Secret, Fire's name. The court wizard of Whiterun has a name that most players register as vaguely fantastical without thinking about it too carefully. Ferengar Secret Fire. His surname is a direct reference to Gandalf's declaration in the Mines of Moria in the Fellowship of the Ring. Gandalf announces himself to the Balrog as a servant of the Secret Fire, wielder of the Flame of Anor. Ferengar Secret Fire is named after that specific declaration. He is a Tolkien reference wearing robes and selling whirlwind sprint. Easter egg, number 29. Advar, the Grateful Assassin. Advar is a fishmonger in Solitude. Your first encounter with him is at the execution of Rogvir, where he's trying to shield his daughter from the sight of the headsman's axe. He barely registers as a character, but there is a note hidden in his story. If you happen to kill the proprietor of a competing market stall, you will receive a letter from Advar, delivered by courier, expressing his heartfelt gratitude for your assistance with his competition problem. He didn't hire the Dark Brotherhood. He didn't ask you to do anything. He just noticed that his rival was gone, drew the obvious conclusion, and wrote you a thank you note. Advar has a practical side the game never mentions out loud. Easter egg number 30. Eric the Slayer is a memorial. Near Rorikstead, at the Frostfruit Inn, you will find a young man named Eric who desperately wants to become an adventurer. His father wants him to stay and farm. If you help Eric convince his father, the father will pay for proper equipment, and Eric will become available as a follower. His default name as a follower is Eric the Slayer. Eric is named for a real person. Eric West was a Skyrim fan who was diagnosed with cancer before the game was released. He made a wish through the Make-A-Wish Foundation to be included in the game, and Bethesda honored it. He died before Skyrim launched and never got to see himself in it. His character is not a memorial in the grand sense. There is no plaque, no note, no explanation in the game. He is simply a young man who wanted to be an adventurer, which is perhaps exactly the right way to remember someone, not in sorrow, but in the thing they loved. Section 3. The Machines That Remember, Dwemer Secrets, Tonal Architecture, and the Hidden Wonders of the Underground. The Dwemer are gone. They disappeared in a single instant in the year 1E700, every member of their race ceasing to exist simultaneously, while their machinery continued running without them. But they left things behind, many things, and some of those things, if you know what you're looking at, are more extraordinary than they first appear. Easter egg, number 31. The tonal architecture of every dwarven machine. Every automaton you fight in a Dwemer ruin, every centurion, every sphere, every spider is not actually running on mechanical energy the way a steam engine runs on heat. The Dwemer understood something that no other civilization in Tamriel has matched, that reality is fundamentally acoustic, that the universe is made of vibrations and resonances. Their machines are not powered by fuel or by arcane energy in any conventional sense. They are powered by specific sustained frequencies, sounds below the threshold of hearing, that interact with the material world in ways that look, from the outside, like impossible perpetual motion. This is why they still work. After 3,000 years, with no maintenance, no fuel, no operator. The resonance they were built around is self-sustaining, locked into the architecture of the machines themselves. The Dwemer did not build mechanisms. They built instruments. Each one a tiny version of the massive tonal architectures they used to reshape reality on a larger scale. When you hear the hum that pervades Dwemer ruins, that is not background ambience. That is the machine still breathing. Easter egg number 32. The Pac-Man in Endon's house. In Markarth, in the home of a silver merchant named Endon, there is a back room with a shelf. On the bottom shelf, arranged with what must have been the specific and careful attention of a game developer who was enjoying themselves considerably, is a wheel of cheese. 3 garlic heads placed in a row beside it, a bowl of glow dust set nearby, The cheese wheel, with a slaughterfish egg serving as the eye, is Pac-Man. The garlic heads are the dots. The glow dust bowl represents the power pellet. The entire arrangement, in the house of a man who has nothing to do with video games or arcade culture, is just sitting there on a shelf, waiting for someone who grew up in the 80s to walk past. Easter egg number 33. The hidden merchant chests beneath every city. Every merchant in Skyrim has an inventory. That inventory physically exists. It is not abstract data. It is not stored in the merchant's pockets. It lives in a physical container that technically exists in the game world, buried beneath or adjacent to the city where that merchant does business. These chests are normally inaccessible, hidden beneath geometry and texture in ways that are not meant to be reached. But at certain locations, particularly near Dawnstar, the terrain can be manipulated in ways that allow access to the Khajiit caravan merchant's chest without entering the game's debug tools. This is not an Easter egg so much as an accidental transparency. Bethesda didn't hide it here on purpose. The fact that it is discoverable at all is a consequence of the engine's concrete approach to inventory management. Everything in this world exists somewhere physically, even the things that are not supposed to matter. The world is more literal than it looks. Easter egg number 34. The dead body cleanup cell. If you play on PC and know the right console commands, you can visit a place that was never meant to be seen. Type cock wide dead body cleanup cell, and you will teleport to a cross-shaped room lit in lurid purple and green. At each end of the corridors, doorways open onto an empty black void. Walking through any of them brings you back to the center. The walls are cobblestone, the light source is invisible. And on the floor, arranged without any ceremony whatsoever, are bodies. Every named NPC you have killed in your playthrough, every unique character whose body eventually faded from the game world, is here. Naked, stripped of their possessions, piled in the middle of a room that exists only to process them and hold them until the game decides their data can be safely deleted. Heimskr is here if you finally snapped. Grella the Kind is here. The assassins you've dispatched. The people who got in the way of things. The room is simultaneously deeply practical. Bethesda needed somewhere to put the data while it finished being cleaned up, and unintentionally existential. Every person you interacted with, if you were careless enough or deliberate enough in your violence, ends up here, in the dark, in a room that doesn't map to any location in the world. Mike is the only named character in the game who has his own separate holding cell and therefore never has to share this space with anyone. Even in technical purgatory, Mike maintains his peculiar status. Easter egg number 35. The GLaDOS, Potato, and Skulldaf. Skulldaf is an ancient Nordic ruin that you can only reach by dragon during the main quest. It is a dramatic place, the gateway to Sovngarde, and most players are too focused on survival to poke around in the fireplaces. But if you search them carefully, in one of those fireplaces sitting in the ash, there is a potato, a regular common-looking potato. But placed on the potato, artfully arranged using a boiled cream treat and a piece of charcoal, is a face. Specifically, the face of GLaDOS from Portal 2, in the scene where she has been reduced to a potato battery. The developers played Portal 2, found GLaDOS's potato battery to be deeply funny, and put her in the fireplaces of a Viking ruin at the edge of the afterlife. This is simply the kind of people they were. Easter egg number 36. The Atronach Forge beneath the college. In the midden, the lower level of the College of Winterhold, hidden behind a sequence of corridors that most students never explore, there is an ancient forge. This is the Atronach Forge, and it predates the college itself. Using specific combinations of ingredients and soul gems, a skilled practitioner can summon bound Daedra and create Daedric equipment without ever traveling to oblivion. One of its key components is a sigil stone, the same kind of stone that powered the Oblivion Gates during the crisis of the Fourth Era. The forge has been running since before anyone currently at the college was born. The college either does not know it is here, or has decided that formally acknowledging its existence would raise questions nobody wants to answer. Easter egg number 37. The Argonians in the Dwarven War Quarters. Also in Blackreach, also in the War Quarters, there is a detail about the Falmer who currently inhabit those spaces that is easy to miss. The Falmer, the blind, degraded descendants of the Snow Elves who were enslaved by the Dwemer, have arranged their camps inside the Dwemer ruins with a particular kind of organization. They have repurposed Dwemer furniture. They have built structures inside Dwemer structures. They have created a society of sorts inside the bones of the civilization that destroyed them. This is not an Easter egg in the pop culture sense. It is a piece of environmental storytelling that Bethesda put into a location most players rush through, about what it means to build a life inside the wreckage of your own oppression. Easter egg number 38, the gambling den beneath Markarth. In the city of Markarth, which is built entirely inside an old Dwemer ruin, there is a great deal of stone and a great deal of conspiracy and a general atmosphere of everyone knowing things they are not saying. Among the things that are not marked on any map is a small, private gambling operation that players who explore thoroughly will eventually stumble across. It serves as quiet confirmation that even in a city this tightly controlled, this surveilled, this politically fraught, human beings will find ways to do what they want to do in the dark. Easter egg number 39, the Dwemer Mammoth sighting. A separate location from the frozen glacier mammoth. In the Dwemer ruin of Alftand, there is additional evidence of Dwemer interaction with megafauna, specifically in the form of journals and notes left by the expedition that was trying to break in before your arrival. These notes describe machinery and encounters, but also include, almost as an aside, references to sounds heard from deep within the ruin, sounds that are enormous and organic and do not match any known automaton. Whatever the Dwemer kept in the lower levels of Alftand, it was alive and it was large, and the expedition members were considerably more frightened of it than they were willing to admit in official correspondence. Easter egg number 40, the lexicon's permanent gift. When you complete Septimus Cygnus's quest line and transcribe the Elder Scrolls lexicon, a peculiar thing happens. The ancient knowledge perk is added to your character permanently. It increases your smithing skill and grants an armor bonus when wearing Dwemer equipment. This is presented as the reward for a quest, which it is. But its underlying implication is that the lexicon transferred knowledge directly into your nervous system, not as a metaphor, as a literal fact. Expertise that would normally require decades of study was imprinted into you in the moment of transcription. The Dwemer achieved direct knowledge transfer and never found anyone to share it with. One broken device, in the hands of one obsessed hermit, managed to pass a fragment of that achievement to one dragonborn, thousands of years after the last Dwemer forgot to exist. Easter egg number 41, the Ethereum Forge and its Lost Wars. Hidden deep beneath the ruins of Bethalft in the Rift, accessible only after gathering 4 scattered Ethereum shards from locations across Skyrim, the Ethereum Forge is one of the game's most extraordinary optional discoveries. This is not just a powerful crafting station, this is the object that caused a civil war among the Dwemer. The 4 major Dwemer city clans fought each other for control of the Ethereum deposit and the forge built to work it. The war they fought over this resource contributed to the internal divisions that made their civilization vulnerable at the moment when vulnerability was catastrophic. The forge survived the war. The civilization didn't. It sits down here in the dark, still functional, still flowing with crystalline mineral that cannot be replicated, waiting for someone patient enough to assemble the key. Easter egg number 42, the self-repairing automatons. Most players notice that Dwemer automatons respawn if you leave an area and come back. The easy explanation is game design, enemy population management. But if you follow the lore consistently, the explanation is architectural. The tonal frequencies embedded in the walls of Dwemer ruins also include maintenance frequencies, resonances designed to repair and rebuild the automatons patrolling them. The machines do not respawn, they recover. They are rebuilt by the environment they were designed to operate within, which means the ruins of Dwemer civilization are not just housing the automatons, they are continuously manufacturing them. From materials that were built into the walls for exactly this purpose, 3,000 years after the Dwemer vanished, their defense systems are still being restocked. Nobody is coming. The factories just haven't received the cancellation notice. Easter egg number 43, the War of the Crag in Blackreach's deepest sections. According to fragmentary Dwemer texts, and certain pieces of environmental evidence in the lower sections of Blackreach, after the Snow Elves were enslaved and blinded and eventually began to physically degenerate into the creatures we know as Falmer, there was a rebellion. Called the War of the Crag, it was fought in the deepest underground passages, in caverns where neither sunlight nor artificial light penetrated. Blind against blind, in a darkness that made the disadvantage of sightlessness irrelevant, the Falmer lost, but they survived. And when the Dwemer vanished in an instant in 1E700, the Falmer suddenly found themselves in possession of the only civilization that had never been entirely theirs. They spread through Blackreach. They made it their own as best they could. This is what you were walking through. All those miles of underground corridors, the aftermath of a war that nobody talks about. Easter egg, number 44, the sleeping quarters of Neuschwandt, Zell. Beneath Markarth, in the Dwemer ruins of Neuschwandt Zell, that the city is built over and around, there is a section of the ruin that was clearly residential. Quarters small and efficiently laid out for the Dwemer who lived and worked here. In one of those quarters, still on the table where it was left, is a half-eaten meal. A bowl of something that is long since fossilized. Whoever lived here, left in the middle of eating. There is something in the casual intimacy of a meal interrupted forever that the scale of Dwemer ruins doesn't usually manage. The race disappeared instantaneously. This is what instantaneous looks like from the perspective of a single bowl. Easter egg number 45, the Kagramez Trials on Solstheim. In the Dragonborn DLC, on the island of Solstheim, the Dwemer ruin of Kagramez contains a series of combat challenges that reward players with unique Dwemer automatons as followers. But the ruin itself contains evidence that the Dwemer used this space as a testing ground, specifically for automatons that were being evaluated for capability and combat performance. The spectators seating in the main chamber, built for observers to watch the trials from above, suggest that this was a social event as well as a technical one. The Dwemer watched their machines fight. They had opinions about which builds were better. They had favorites. The ruin is the physical remnant of a species' hobbies. Section 4. Words carved in stone. Thuum secrets, word wall discoveries, and the dragon language hiding in plain sight. The dragon language, Dovazul, is not just a communication system, it is reality structured as sound. When you absorb a word of power at a word wall, you are not learning a word so much as being changed by one. The entire system of shouts in Skyrim is grounded in a specific cosmological framework that has implications scattered throughout the game in places most players never look. Let's go looking. Easter egg number 46, the Oblivion Passage on a word wall. On the word wall in the Eldergleam Sanctuary that contains the second word of the Whirlwind Sprint shout, there is a passage in the dragon language. Players who took the time to learn Dovazul could translate it. The translated passage reads, "Oblivion hath no fury like a shield maiden scorned." This is an Elder Scrolls reworking of a famous English proverb, rewritten in the dragon language, carved into ancient stone, and placed somewhere that almost no one would ever look closely enough to find. Whoever wrote this passage during development was having a wonderful time. Easter egg number 47, Azaran the Cruel in the word wall of Gron. The word wall for the third word of Become Ethereal contains a passage that, when translated from Dovazul, mentions a name, Azaran the Cruel. This is not a lore character invented for Skyrim. Azaran the Cruel is a character from the Thief 2 video game, part of the Thief series developed before many of the Skyrim team members joined Bethesda. Emil Pagliarulo, who served as lead writer on Skyrim, worked on the Thief games before making the transition. He hid a character from his old work inside the ancient stone carvings of his new work. The word wall system, ancient and sacred and tied to the deep history of dragons and men, contains a tribute to a stealth game from the late 1990s. Easter egg number 48, the Poetic Edda and Azadal's final performance. At Bard's Leap Summit in the Reach, the wooden platform extends over a very high waterfall. If you make the jump off the platform and survive the fall into the pool below, a ghost appears. He is a Redguard man in Hammerfell garb, carrying a scimitar, and his name is Azadal. He tells you, with a kind of rueful humor, that he once performed the entirety of the Poetic Edda from this summit before attempting the jump himself. He did not survive. He will then play you a wordless song that increases your speech skill by 2 points. The Poetic Edda is a real collection of Old Norse poems, one of the most important sources for Norse mythology, assembled in Iceland in the 13th century. Azadal, a bard from the Reach during the brief reign of King Madanach, climbed to this summit, recited the entire thing, and then leaped. The jump that killed him also, apparently, gave him enough reputation that the location bears his profession's name. Bard's Leap Summit. His ghost is still there, still playing. Still proud of having done the whole Poetic Edda before he jumped, even though the jumping part didn't work out. Easter egg number 49, the Thuum as architecture. In the construction of Dwemer cities, specifically in the resonance chambers and acoustic halls of places like Blackreach and Alftand, the geometry of the spaces consistently optimizes for specific sound properties. The ceiling heights, the material choices, the angles of reflection are not random, they are calibrated. The Dwemer, in building their cities, were also building instruments, and the instrument they were building was designed to produce, sustain, and amplify specific frequencies at a scale that individual tonal practitioners couldn't achieve alone. The cities were the instruments, the population were the players, and the music they made was the manipulation of reality itself. Easter egg number 50, the dragon language books in Labyrinthian. Labyrinthian, the maze ruin in the hold of Hjalmark, was formerly called Bromjunar, and it was the administrative capital of the dragon cult's theocratic government. The priest shrine deep in its depths displays the busts of 8 major dragon priests, but scattered throughout its passages are texts in the dragon language that predate any surviving translation. Some of these passages have been decoded by player communities who learn Dovazul. The content is, in some cases, not theological or administrative. It is personal, reflections, grievances, observations about power and devotion, and the specific experience of serving a god who demands everything and never explains why. Priests writing for themselves, knowing no one would read it, in a language only they and their masters understood. Easter egg number 51, Paarthurnax's daily meditation cycle. If you observe Paarthurnax on the throat of the world at different times of day, his behavior varies in ways most players never notice because they approach him on quest business and have no reason to wait. In the mornings he meditates on the word Tid, the word for time. In the afternoons he moves to a different position and his meditative posture shifts. He has a daily routine, maintained over thousands of years, that has nothing to do with the Dragonborn and everything to do with who he has chosen to be. Each day, he works on himself. The game runs his schedule, whether you are there to see it or not. Easter egg number 52, the invisible shout that changes the map. When players open Skyrim's world map, they are not looking at a static image. The map is a real-time rendering of the actual game world, viewed from high above and processed through a set of visual filters. This means that events happening in the world appear on the map. Absorbing a dragon soul creates a visible glow. Major spell effects can be spotted from map view. And the Greybeard's summons, the shout that echoes across all of Skyrim when they call the Dragonborn to High Hrothgar, is so powerful that it is perceptible on the map as a visible disturbance rippling outward from the throat of the world. The map isn't an abstraction. It is Skyrim, seen from the perspective of someone very far up looking down. Easter egg number 53, Alduin's Wall as a complete history. In Skyhaven Temple, built by the Akaviri Blades in the First Era, there is a wall. The Akaviri carved it as both record and prophecy after helping defeat Alduin the first time, believing he would return and wanting to leave a guide for whoever would face him again. The carvings show Alduin's return, the emergence of the Dragonborn, and the shape of the conflict that will unfold. They also show something else, the entire history of the Elder Scrolls series up to that point. There are carvings that unmistakably depict the Staff of Chaos from Arena, the first game, Numidium from Daggerfall, the eruption of Red Mountain from Morrowind, and Oblivion Gate from Oblivion. The wall is not just the lore of Skyrim. It is the lore of the franchise, assembled into a single ancient document by developers who understood that the best kind of world building always has a spine. Easter egg number 54, the word wall dragon pattern. At the base of most word walls, if you look at the engraving before you approach close enough to activate the word, the text is carved in circular patterns around the wall's center. These patterns, from a distance, follow the silhouette of a dragon in flight. The word walls are literally dragon-shaped. The knowledge is in the shape of the thing that carried it. You absorb the word, and in doing so you absorb something of the form that brought it to you. Easter egg number 55, the shout that names the mountain. High Hrothgar's name, in the old Nordic and dragon language influenced form that Bethesda constructed, translates roughly to High Home of the Warrior Sage. The Greybeards chose to build their monastery at this specific altitude, at this specific location, not arbitrarily, but because it is as close to the temporal wound created by Alduin's banishment as it is possible to live without standing at the summit itself. The name of the building is a description of its inhabitants and also its purpose. It is a home for those who choose warrior capabilities and sage restraint, in service of a mountain that is more than a mountain. Easter egg number 56, the Soul Cairn Voices. In the Soul Cairn, the plane of oblivion where soul-trapped victims spend eternity, the wandering shades that you pass on your way through the landscape will occasionally say things, fragments of dialogue, pieces of personality that have survived whatever process brought them here. One of the more memorable lines, if you catch it, is a shade saying, "Death is but a door, time is but a window. I'll be back." This is the last line spoken by Vigo the Carpathian before his death in Ghostbusters 2, voiced in the film by Max von Sydow, who also voiced Paarthurnax in Skyrim. The developers gave a Max von Sydow character a line originally spoken by a different Max von Sydow character in an entirely different context and placed it in the mouth of an anonymous lost soul wandering an afterlife. Easter egg number 57, the Fintroll Book. In the College of Winterhold's library, among the many actual books with in-game text and lore, there is a book called Troll Slaying. This is not the Easter egg. The Easter egg is the author's name, written on the cover, Finn. Combining the title and the author's name gives you Fintroll, the name of a Finnish folk metal band whose entire discography, going back to their founding in 1998, concerns itself with trolls and the fighting thereof. The book about slaying trolls, by an author named Finn, sits in the library of a school of magic in the Arctic cold, and it has nothing to do with anything except that somebody working on Skyrim really liked Fintroll. Easter egg number 58, the invisible boundaries of the map's south. If you push against Skyrim's southern borders, past the point where the game normally prevents you from traveling, and look south through the fog, you can see something. The White Gold Tower, the iconic landmark of the Imperial City in Cyrodiil, rises from the haze. Bethesda included a simplified rendering of Oblivion's game world on Skyrim's southern horizon. It is not a static texture, it is a simplified three-dimensional model. The two games exist in the same continuous world space. The provinces are real places that occupy real positions relative to each other. You cannot get there, but it is there, looking back at you through the southern mist, proof that the world extends well beyond the borders of the game you are playing. Section 5, The Dead Who Won't Rest. Soul Cairn Secrets, Undead Lore, and the many ways Skyrim thinks about death. Skyrim thinks about death constantly. It is a game where you kill things all day, but the specifics of where those things go afterward, what happens to the soul, what lingers after the body is done, these questions are taken seriously by the game's lore. And some of the most interesting Easter eggs are the ones that illuminate the mechanics of dying in a world that takes dying very seriously. Easter egg number 59, the Frostflow Lighthouse Family. On the northern coast of Winterhold Hold, sitting on a rocky promontory above the frozen sea, the Frostflow Lighthouse looks like a simple landmark, a building with a light. You might pass it several times and never stop. If you do stop and go inside, you will find a horror story that is already finished. The wife, Ramadi, is on the floor with a Falmer war axe through her chest. There is blood on the walls, there is evidence of violence everywhere, and there are journals, scattered through the lighthouse, telling the story of a family who moved here from Hammerfell with high hopes and a dream of a lighthouse of their own, who then heard things in the cellar, who saw their food disappearing, who lost family members one at a time to something that came from below. Habd, the husband and father, went into the cellar to investigate when the disappearances started. He left a journal behind for anyone who found the lighthouse. The depths below the cellar are extensive and dangerous. At the bottom, if you fight your way through, you will find a boss-level chorus and Hab's remains. Completing this will grant you a permanent ability called Sailor's Repose, which makes healing spells 10% more effective. The family had a name for the lighthouse they bought. They called it their dream. The game never tells you this explicitly. You piece it together from the journals. It is one of the finest examples of environmental storytelling in a game that has many. Nobody sent you here. Nobody told you the story was worth hearing. You just had to be the kind of person who goes inside a lighthouse. Easter egg number 60, Arvok, the horse that won't stay dead. Deep in the Soul Cairn, the desolate purple wasteland where trapped souls wander, you will encounter a floating skull and a ghostly rider who asks you to find it. The skull belongs to Arvok, a horse who died in the Soul Cairn while trying to stay with his owner. If you find the skull and return it, You learn the Conjure Arvok spell, which allows you to summon Arvok as a permanent mount in any location at any time. Arvok is a spectral horse who glows with a soft, pale light. He cannot die permanently. He cannot be lost. He will come when called from anywhere in the world, from the top of the throat of the world or the bottom of Blackreach, from the Soul Cairn itself or the streets of Solitude. The game never tells you to look for him. Finding him requires exploring the Soul Cairn beyond its quest objectives, talking to the Shade who misses him, and caring enough about a ghost's horse to do something about it. The reward is the best mount in the game by most practical measures, but the reason to find him is the story. Easter egg, number 61. The Molag Bal connection to every vampire. Vampirism in Skyrim has a cosmological origin that the game only reveals if you actively seek it out. Molag Bal, the Daedric prince of domination and corruption, created the first vampire in an act of deliberate violation against a mortal woman named Lemay Beolfag. The disease has spread and diversified over the millennia since, generating regional variants and bloodline distinctions, but every vampire in Skyrim ultimately traces their condition to this single originary crime. The nature of vampirism, its tendencies toward domination, its dependency on blood, its corruption of the self, all reflect the nature of the being who created it. This is not a revelation the game delivers through quest dialogue. It is lore contained in scattered texts, in the Dawnguard materials, in books that players who are interested in the archaeology of the world will eventually find. The full horror of what Molag Bal did, and what all vampirism since then represents, is only available to players who go looking for it. Easter egg number 62. The Sovngarde statues that watch you. When you enter Sovngarde during the main quest, you descend a long stairway lined with stone statues of Nordic warriors. This is an extraordinary visual moment. But if you are paying attention at the right time, specifically as you descend the steps, you will notice that the statues turn to follow you. Their heads rotate. They watch you come down. They are not described as magical or sentient in any context. The game never comments on this. They just turn their stone heads to track the Dragonborn arriving in the land of the dead, and then they go still again. Easter egg number 63. The Headless Horseman's Route. At night sometimes, on the roads of Skyrim, you will encounter a figure on a horse, a mounted warrior with no head, riding in a specific direction through the dark. He does not attack. He does not interact. He does not acknowledge your presence. He rides. If you follow him, and this requires patience because he moves at a consistent pace and will not deviate from his route, he will eventually lead you to Hamvir's Rest, a burial ground full of Draugr. His grave is presumably there. He is presumably this restless every night, riding to the place his body is kept, for reasons the game never specifies. This is a direct reference to Washington Irving's Legend of Sleepy Hollow. The Headless Horseman has no quest, no reward, no resolution. He exists to create atmosphere and to reward the kind of player who, when they see an unusual thing on a dark road, does not attack it but instead follows it into the night to see where it goes. Easter egg number 64. The Ebony Warrior Seeks Death. At level 80, if you have reached that height, you will be approached by a Redguard warrior in black armor. He will tell you without preamble that he has done everything there is to do in this world, that he has mastered every art, defeated every challenge, achieved everything that could be achieved, that he is ready to enter Sovngarde, and that for that to happen, he needs to die in a worthy battle. He wants you to kill him. The Ebony Warrior is one of the strongest opponents in the game. He uses shouts. He has a Reflect Blows enchantment. He will kill you multiple times before you kill him if you are not careful. But what he is, underneath the mechanics, is a meditation on what happens in warrior cultures when a person achieves everything they set out to achieve and finds that the space on the other side of achievement is not peace but emptiness. He is too powerful to die accidentally. He cannot find an opponent worthy of giving him the death he has earned. He has been waiting for you specifically for the one person in Skyrim strong enough to send him where he wants to go. Easter egg number 65. The Ring of Namira and what it requires. Namira, the Daedric prince of darkness and revulsion, offers a ring that provides increased stamina and the ability to feed on corpses to regenerate health. The quest to obtain it leads you to a ritual in Markarth's Hall of the Dead and requires, at its conclusion, that you eat a human corpse in front of the priest who guides the ritual. The game requires you to do this yourself, You press the button, your character eats, the ring is very good, the cost is becoming a cannibal. What is interesting about this beyond the obvious shock value is what Namira is testing for. She is the prince of the things mortals find most revolting, the things that create the deepest disgust responses, the taboos so fundamental that most people cannot even think about crossing them. Her ring doesn't just reward power, it selects for a specific kind of person, someone willing to step past the most basic of boundaries for an advantage. The ring isn't a prize. It's a character assessment. Easter egg number 66. Cicero's last contract before madness. In Cicero's journals, which you can find in his quarters at the Dark Brotherhood Sanctuary, the last contract he completed before everything fell apart is described in more detail than the others. He killed a jester, a court jester, a man whose job was to make people laugh. And something about that contract, something about the specific nature of ending someone whose whole purpose was lightness and performance, affected him in ways he could not process. Shortly after, he began wearing the jester's costume. He began performing. He became, in some way he does not fully understand himself, the thing he killed. His madness has a shape. It is the shape of a guilt he could not carry any other way. Easter egg number 67. The Falmer were once beautiful. Knight Paladin Jelibor, the last surviving snow elf in a state of preservation in the Forgotten Vale, will tell you the full story of what his people were before the Dwemer got to them, if you ask the right questions. The Snow Elves were a sophisticated civilization, builders of extraordinary architecture, cultivators of culture, a people who prized knowledge and beauty. The creatures you have been fighting in Dwemer ruins, the pale, twisted, eyeless things called Falmer, are what multiple generations of deliberate blindness, slavery, and forced degradation made of them. If you want to understand the horror of that transformation fully, walk through the Forgotten Vale, the Snow Elf sacred site preserved in its original form, and then think about the Falmer you just killed in the corridor next to it. That was the distance between who they were and what was done to them. Easter egg number 68. The grief mechanics of Sovngarde. In Sovngarde, the Nord afterlife, the souls of the dead have settled into a kind of eternal twilight ease, feasting in Shore's Hall, telling stories. But the ones you recognize, characters from your playthrough who died in the course of events, are there, with their full memories intact. They remember you. They know what happened. The conversations are brief, but the implication is enormous. The dead of Skyrim do not simply cease. They carry everything with them into the hall at the end of the world. What they do with that there, in the long halls with the infinite ale, is not something the game can show you, but it happened. Easter egg number 69. Potema's spirit was never fully dispersed. The Wolf Queen of Solitude, Potema Septim, died centuries ago, but her necromantic talent was so extreme that her consciousness lingered in the catacombs beneath Solitude long after her body was gone. A cult of necromancers was working very nearly successfully to rebuild her a physical form when you intervene. The Jarl asks you to deal with the problem, and you do. You disperse her spirit, you prevent the resurrection. But the priest of Arkay who performs the final rites expresses doubt. He did what he could. He isn't certain it was enough. He thinks her will might reconsolidate given enough time and enough devotion from followers who remember her name. She's been doing this for centuries. One more dispersion might just be a delay. Easter egg number 70. The Ghost Blade and the word Oblivion has no fury. We have already mentioned the word wall inscription, but there is a companion Easter egg embedded in the Ghost Blade, a sword found in Ansylvand, a tomb in the Rift. The quest involving Ansylvand concerns a man named Lua Alskaven, who is trying to raise her dead husband. She is a woman of tremendous talent and absolute grief, using necromancy for the most human of reasons. The ghost blade she wields when you finally confront her cuts through solid barriers, phasing through defenses, which is mechanical confirmation of the inscription's emotional truth. There are things grief will cut through that armor cannot stop. Easter egg number 71. The Molag Bal altar's position in Markarth. In Markarth, the House of Horrors quest leads you to an abandoned house where a Molag Bal shrine has been concealed. The specific horror of this quest involves the physical restraint of a prisoner who is left there while the prince explains what he wants done. The arrangement of chairs in the house's main room, which players who have encountered the Poltergeist film may recognize immediately, mirrors the famous stacked chairs scene from that 1982 horror movie. The chairs are stacked, unnecessarily, inexplicably stacked. This is a visual joke inside a deeply uncomfortable quest, which is exactly the kind of tonal dissonance Molag Bal's portfolio covers. Easter egg number 72. The Soul Cairn is built from stolen lives. The Soul Cairn, where you must go to find Arvak and interact with Serana's mother, is not simply an oblivion plane. It is constructed from the suffering of souls trapped in soul gems and used to power enchantments. Every enchanted weapon in Skyrim, every enchanted piece of armor, every charged soul gem in every laboratory represents someone who died, got soul-trapped instead of reaching their proper afterlife, and ended up here. The Purple Wastes, the wandering shades with their fragments of personality, all of that is the cost of the enchanting system. The game never requires you to think about this. But it is true, and the evidence is all around you in the Soul Cairn. If you talk to enough of the lost souls and listen to what they say about why they are there. Section 6. Bethesda's Winks. Developer Easter eggs, real-world references, and meta-humor. Now we get to the category of Easter egg that feels most like a conversation. These are the places where the developers broke the fourth wall gently, left a note for someone paying attention, or acknowledged the world outside the game with varying degrees of subtlety. These are the places where Bethesda's personality shows through most clearly. Easter egg number 73. The Notched Pickaxe. At the very summit of the throat of the world, past the point where Paarthurnax waits, at the absolute apex of the highest mountain in Skyrim, embedded in a stone, is a pickaxe. Not a particularly special-looking pickaxe, but its name is the Notched Pickaxe, and it has an enchantment that boosts smithing skill. Both Skyrim and Minecraft were released in 2011. Minecraft's creator, Marcus Persson, publicly used the username Notch. The pickaxe is a mining tool. The enchantment boosts crafting. The placement requires climbing to the most dramatic possible location to find something that, on paper, is a fairly ordinary item. This is Bethesda acknowledging their competitor and contemporary in the most affectionate way available to them at the top of the world, where you'd have to specifically go looking. Easter egg number 74. The Pac-Man setup and variations. We covered Endon's house, but there is a second Pac-Man arrangement in the game, less well known. In Calixto's museum in Windhelm, among the curiosities on display, there is an arrangement of objects that roughly approximates the same arcade game silhouette. The developers apparently liked this particular Easter egg enough to do it twice, in 2 different cities, in 2 different contexts, waiting for players to notice both. Easter egg number 75. The Shawshank Redemption Red Letter. In the Sidna Mine sequence, after the various confrontations have played out and you find yourself in the deeper sections of the mine, you will find a letter. The letter is from one prisoner to another and includes the phrase, "I'm getting out of here." The question is, when you're finally ready, can you? This is essentially the thematic core of Shawshank Redemption reduced to a found note in a Dwemer-built prison. The developers are not being subtle. They want you to know they watched the same films you watched. Easter egg number 76. The Galaxy Quest Inn reference. In the Frozen Hearth Inn in Winterhold, early in your visit to the city, you can overhear a conversation between Dagger the innkeeper and a mage named Nelikar. Nelikar has been conducting magical experiments in his room. Dagger is less than pleased about this and describes the results of a recent experiment as smelling like some horrible monster was turned inside out and then exploded. This is a near verbatim recreation of a line from Galaxy Quest, in which a crew member describes the outcome of a transporter malfunction that turned an alien creature inside out and then caused it to explode. The writers of Skyrim either loved Galaxy Quest or hired someone who did. Easter egg number 77. It's a secret to everybody. During the companion's quest line, specifically in the quest Proving Honor, the companion Farkas says this line to you. Word for word, it's a secret to everybody. This is one of the most referenced dialogue lines in video game history, originating from The Legend of Zelda on the NES in 1986, where a character in a cave says exactly this before giving you an item. Farkas says it in a companion's trial dungeon, in the context of revealing the Inner Circle's lycanthropy, which is entirely appropriate. Some secrets are older than the games they appear in. Easter egg number 78. The Lusty Argonian Maid's Ubiquity. Cassius Curio, a character from Morrowind, wrote an erotic text called The Lusty Argonian Maid. It was a joke in Morrowind. In Oblivion, it reappeared. In Skyrim, it is everywhere. You can find it in noble houses, in bandit camps, in the rooms of merchants, in the College of Winterhold, in the Blue Palace. Guards have been caught reading it. Bards sometimes quote from it. It is not presented as particularly remarkable by anyone in the game world. It is simply this era's most successful piece of fiction, apparently. The developers kept escalating its presence with each game. By Skyrim, they had committed to the bit entirely. It is everywhere. Cassius Curio achieved a form of literary immortality that the most sincere writers in Tamriel could never have predicted. In Soul's time, in the Dwemer ruin of Ben Congarik, there is a reekling hut tucked away by itself. It is full of dozens of copies of The Lusty Argonian Maid and linen cloths. The game knows exactly what it's doing here and decided to do it anyway. Easter egg number 79. The Silver Bloods always pay their debts. In Sidna Mine, if you side with Thonar Silverblood over Madanach and kill Madanach inside the prison, Thonar rewards you and says, "The Silverbloods pay their debts. You have my thanks. This is Game of Thrones. This is Lannister family motif. Their famous "A Lannister always pays his debts," transferred into the mouth of a corrupt Reach nobleman in a mine prison. Skyrim was released in the same era that Game of Thrones was reaching its early peak of cultural saturation, and the developers were watching the same television everyone else was watching. Easter egg number 80. The Annie reference in Honor Hall Orphanage. When you first enter the orphanage in Riften, controlled by the abusive Grelod the Kind, you will hear her shouting at the children. She asks, "What do you say?" The children respond, in resigned unison, "We love you, Grelod. Thank you for your kindness." This is directly lifted from the musical Annie, in which Miss Hannigan regularly demands the same confirmation from the orphans in her care. The content is also functionally the same, an authority figure extracting forced expressions of gratitude from children who are being mistreated. The musical Annie made the scene comedic. Skyrim makes it quietly horrifying. The same words, the same dynamic, separated by a genre and a context that changes the entire weight of it. Easter egg number 81. The Ghostbusters 2 Soul Cairn voice. We have mentioned this already, but let us sit with it a moment. In the Soul Cairn, lost souls wander the purple wastes saying fragments of things. One of them says, "Death is but a door, time is but a window, I'll be back." This is the final declaration of Vigo the Carpathian in Ghostbusters 2, a character voiced by Max von Sydow. Paarthurnax, one of the most significant and memorable characters in Skyrim, is also voiced by Max von Sydow. The developers took a Max von Sydow character's dramatic death speech and gave it to an anonymous ghost wandering the afterlife, in a game where a different Max von Sydow character holds the key to defeating death itself. The circular nature of this is so perfectly constructed that it is almost impossible to believe it was accidental. Easter egg number 82. The A Night to Remember quest is The Hangover. At level 14, when you visit an inn, you will encounter Sam Gavin, a friendly stranger who will invite you to a drinking contest. If you accept, you will wake up somewhere completely different from where you started, with no memory of the night and a quest log full of problems you apparently created. Investigating what you did while drunk and cleaning up the consequences while receiving contradictory and deeply embarrassing secondhand accounts from people who saw you during the blackout is exactly the structure of the 2009 film The Hangover. The developers liked this film enough to turn it into a Daedric quest and give it to Sanguine, the Prince of Debauchery, which is the only prince who could have appropriate jurisdiction over a quest built entirely around consequences of irresponsible drinking. Easter egg number 83. Kolb and the Dragon. In various locations across Skyrim, you can find a book called Kolb and the Dragon, which is a choose-your-own adventure story. You read it, you make a choice about what Kolb the Nord does next, and you turn to the indicated page number. If you make the wrong choices, Kolb dies. If you make the right choices, Kolb defeats the dragon. This is the only interactive fiction object in Skyrim, and it exists as an affectionate nod to the choose-your-own-adventure book series that was enormously popular in the 1980s, the genre that technically predates modern RPG branching narrative design. Kolb and the Dragon is, in a small way, a salute to the ancestors of the game genre Skyrim belongs to. Easter egg number 84. The Fin-Troll and Troll Slaying book again, in context. The book Troll Slaying by Finn is in the College of Winterhold's library on an actual shelf where students would be expected to find it useful. The College of Winterhold is an institution in the frozen north of a cold country fighting creatures that include trolls. A book about slaying trolls by an author whose name makes a Finnish folk metal reference is exactly the kind of resource this library would logically stock. The Easter egg is hidden in the most natural-looking possible location because naturally, looking like it belongs there is how Easter eggs survive, being in plain sight for 14 years. Easter egg number 85, the fandom lawsuit pickaxe. There is additional context to the notched pickaxe beyond simple affection. In 2012, Mojang filed a trademark application for the name Scrolls for one of their games. Bethesda Softworks, who owned the Elder Scrolls trademark, pursued legal action out of concern about consumer confusion. The case was eventually settled outside of court. The notched pickaxe was already in the game by then. Whether it was intended as a gesture of mutual respect, a preemptive olive branch, or simply a coincidence of development timing is not something Bethesda has ever fully clarified. The pickaxe is there regardless, at the top of the world, with its smithing enchantment, pointing at its reference with a name that doesn't pretend to be subtle. Easter egg number 86, the Poetic Edda reference in Azadal's dialogue. We have discussed Azadal the Ghost Bard in terms of the mechanical reward, but his specific dialogue deserves attention. He tells you he performed the entirety of the Poetic Edda before making his jump. The Poetic Edda is a real-world collection of Old Norse poems that preserved much of Norse mythology after Christianity spread through Scandinavia. It is one of the foundational texts of the cultural tradition that Skyrim draws from more heavily than almost any other. Having a bard in a game built on that tradition perform the entire text as a dramatic prelude to jumping off a cliff is a very specific tribute from people who did their research and wanted to acknowledge it. Easter egg number 87, Haldir and Haldir. In the Nordic ruin of Haldir's cairn, the boss is a spectral Draugr mage named Haldir. This is almost certainly a reference to Haldir of Lothlorien, the elven warrior who guards the forest realm in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. A Tolkien reference hiding in a Norse-inspired dungeon, named after an elf but applied to a Viking undead, in a game that has already hidden Gandalf in the court wizard's surname. The developers were drawing water from the same well Tolkien drew from, and leaving notes for people who recognize the source. Easter egg number 88, Mike's commentary on missing features. Mike the Liar's dialogue includes references that change between game entries but always include observations about features that were in previous Elder Scrolls games and are not in the current one. In Skyrim, he mentions never finding calipers, a reference to small items removed from Oblivion. He makes observations about dragons flying backward, acknowledging a common bug. He mentions that he once heard of a place where an arrow to the knee was a common injury, referencing the then ubiquitous internet meme about the guard dialogue. Mike exists in a peculiar space where the game's commitment to realism and the player's awareness of the game as a constructed object can coexist in the same body of text. His name, the Liar, provides cover. If he's a liar, nothing he says has to be true, which means everything he says could be. Section 7. Hidden in plain sight. Environmental storytelling, unmarked discoveries, and the world's quiet details. Skyrim's best environmental storytelling operates on the assumption that a certain number of players will be curious enough and patient enough to assemble stories from the fragments left behind. No quest markers, no journal entries, just physical evidence and the willingness to spend a few minutes with it. Easter egg number 89, Miko's Shack. Just off the road between Dragonbridge and Morthal, a dog will approach you. He is friendly, and if you stop walking, he will lead you somewhere. He leads you to a small shack. Inside the shack, on a bed, is a dead man, and on the table beside the bed is a journal with one entry. The man died of rock joint. He knew it was coming. He wrote that he hoped his dog could take care of himself. The journal's final line is about Miko, trusting that the dog would be fine, not knowing that the dog would find a way to bring someone to the shack instead. Miko's level cap is lower than other followers. His fighting capabilities are modest. But players who find him, who follow him to that shack and read that journal, have a hard time letting him go to someone else. He is a companion whose entire value is in the story of how you met him. Easter egg number 90, the road to Dragonbridge crime scene. Southeast of Dragonbridge, on an unremarkable stretch of road, there is a crime scene. A man, a woman, and a horse. All dead, all killed recently. No quest marker appears. No note is visible from the road, but if you examine the scene and follow the clues, you will find your way to 2 additional locations that reveal what happened and offer an opportunity to find the person responsible. This is a complete mystery quest with no official quest status. It exists entirely as environmental storytelling, with a resolution available only to players who treat the scene as an investigation rather than a random roadside accident. Easter egg number 91. The Whiterun skooma camp outside the walls. Just outside Whiterun's main gate, in a location you will pass on your way to and from the city many times, there is a small camp. Its occupants are involved in skooma smuggling. They appear to be ordinary travelers. If you attempt to interact with their supply, they will attack you. The skooma operation outside the gates of one of Skyrim's most prominent cities has apparently been running for a long time. The city guards patrol the road constantly. Nobody has done anything about it. This small camp is Bethesda's quiet commentary on how criminal enterprises survive by looking ordinary from the right distance. Easter egg number 92. The abandoned prison and its letters. Near the rift, there is an old prison that appears on no map. Inside it, the cells are empty, but the letters are not. In the corners and on the floors, and tucked into cracks in the walls, there are notes from former prisoners and guards, telling the story of a collapse of authority, a betrayal from inside, and a final night that apparently left everyone either dead or fled. The building itself tells you what kind of place it was. The notes tell you what happened to the kind of place it was. Together, they make a story that has no happy ending, and was never going to have one from its first sentence. Easter egg number 93. Lucky Lorenz's shack. Across a river from the abandoned prison, there is a shack. A tree has fallen on it, completely crushing the structure. Lucky Lorenz is inside. Or rather, Lucky Lorenz's body is inside, beneath the tree that fell on the shack. This is the entire Easter egg. The name is Lucky Lorenz. The tree fell on him. You can loot Treasure Map 9 from the ruins, which suggests that he did find some things before the tree fell. How much good it did him is a matter the universe has rendered its verdict on. Easter egg number 94. The Ice Spike Frozen Sabercat. Southeast of the Shrine of Periite, in the mountainous terrain near Carthwayston, there is a skeleton of a sabercat, not just lying there. The sabercat is frozen between 2 rocks, and through its skull is driven a glass sword. It is posed exactly like the scene from the film 300 Inches, which King Leonidas drives a spear through the mouth of a wolf that has been herded into a narrow mountain pass. The sabercat is in a narrow mountain pass. The sword is through its head. This is a 2,000-year-old story about Spartan military tactics being commemorated by an Ice Age cat frozen in a crevice in a Viking game. The range of references Skyrim holds, coexisting without friction, is genuinely extraordinary. Easter egg number 95. Yizra's final experiment. On the shoreline east of Dawnstar, there is a charred corpse lying on the rocks. This is Yizra. She was a student at the College of Winterhold, one of several who went missing together and formed the basis of a college side quest. But if you are not doing that quest, if you simply stumble across her body while walking the northern coast, all you have is a charred corpse, the explanation for which is written on her body more clearly than any journal could manage. She was experimenting with fire magic. The experiment concluded badly. The experiment concluded very finally. Easter egg number 96. The Hagraven that is never there. Up the mountain above Ragnvald in the Reach, there is a small camp, a tent, an altar, a dead goat. This is a Hagraven's home, unmistakably. But the Hagraven is not present when you arrive. No matter when you arrive, she is always just gone, or never quite there. The camp is always set up, the goat is always dead, but the occupant is always absent. The game implies she is nearby watching, but never resolves this into anything. There is something about a Hagraven's home with no Hagraven in it that is precisely as unsettling as a Hagraven's home with a Hagraven in it, just differently. The presence is implied by the absence. Easter egg number 97. The Altar of Srib. Southwest of Winterhold, in the snow and the dark, there is an ancient altar. Not Dwemer, not Nordic, something older. The altar is surrounded by piles of bones and has offerings arranged on it, with a conjuration skill book called The Doors of Oblivion sitting among the offerings as if it were placed there deliberately by whoever uses this altar. There is no name, no text explaining what Xrib is or was. This name does not appear anywhere else in the game. The altar is simply there, being used by someone for something in the cold outside Winterhold, and the college above the hill apparently has no idea. Easter egg number 98, the sunken treasure map. Northwest of the wreck of the Brinehammer, in the Sea of Ghosts, beneath the freezing water, there is a chest. You cannot see it from the surface. You have to swim out into the Arctic Sea and dive and look. The chest contains leveled loot. There is nothing to explain how it got there or who left it. The ocean just has it. Skyrim's northern waters are full of things that sank or were thrown or were carried out there by currents or decisions that have been forgotten. The game's underwater environments are consistently underpopulated by players, which is a shame, because Bethesda clearly put things in the water for people willing to go looking. Easter egg number 99, the secret of Kagrenzel's lower chamber. After you fall through the trap in Kagrenzel, which we have discussed, you land in a water-filled cavern far below the ruin. This chamber is not marked on any map. It contains dwarven machinery, crimson nirnroot, and evidence that suggests this lower chamber was being used for something that required separation from the main ruin. The water is cold, and the light is strange, and the walls are close. Somewhere down here, a Dwemer was doing something they did not want their colleagues to know about. The nature of that something is not explained. The isolation suggests it was either very important or very questionable, and the distance between those two possibilities in Dwemer scholarship was never particularly large. Easter egg number 100, the burning shacks that never go out. We mentioned one burning shack in Jalmarch. There is a second one in a valley south of Forelhost. Same phenomenon, a small structure burning indefinitely, the previous occupant still inside. A scroll of Conjure Flame Atronach lying in the area, which is either the explanation or a coincidence that has been allowed to imply itself. These two burning shacks, in separate parts of the map, are Bethesda's acknowledgement that accidents happen, that magic accidents in particular happen, and that in a world without fire departments, some accidents just burn forever. There is something meditative about them. They will be burning long after you leave. They were burning before you arrived. Easter egg number 101, the waterfall campsite northwest of Anga's Mill. This one is simply beautiful. Northwest of Anga's Mill, in the Pale, there is a small campsite near a waterfall. A tent, a campfire, the sound of water, it's someone's place. The someone is not there currently, or perhaps they are rarely there, returning occasionally. The campsite exists not because there is a quest attached to it, not because there is loot worth having, but because someone at Bethesda thought the space was right for a campsite, and a campsite without a story is still a space that suggests a story. Who camps here? Why here specifically? The answers are yours. Easter egg number 102, the Nirnroot Island of Solstheim. North of Frossel on Solstheim, there is a small rocky island. On this island, 6 Nirnroot plants grow, but they are not normal Nirnroots. They are giant Nirnroots, human-sized. 3 Spriggans guard them. An East Empire Company strongbox sits on the island with minor loot, and there is a boat nearby with a dead Dwemer. The giant Nirnroots are a direct callback to Oblivion, where Nirnroot first appeared as a collectible ingredient between Skingrad and Kavach. Bringing them to giant size is the Dragonborn DLC's way of saying, we remember where we came from, and we are willing to scale that memory to an unreasonable size to prove it. Section 8. The Guilds and Their Shadows. Faction Secrets, Dark Brotherhood Lore, and the Thieves Guild's Hidden Language. Every major faction in Skyrim has a surface story and a deeper one. The Companions have an origin in genocide. The Dark Brotherhood has a theology built on entropy itself. The Thieves Guild is a religious organization that just happens to steal. The more you look at these institutions, the more interesting the foundations become. Easter egg number 103, the shadow marks of the Thieves Guild. Throughout Skyrim, near the entrances of buildings and at key locations in every major city, there are subtle carvings. If you have access to the Thieves Guild's Shadow Mark Guide, you can read them. They are a language. This building is safe for guild members. This location contains valuable loot. This place is dangerous. This route is an escape path. The marks have been there in front of every guard and city official for years, and nobody who doesn't know the language sees anything other than random vandalism. The guild does not advertise. It communicates in code that is invisible to anyone who hasn't been brought inside. Easter egg number 104, the Nocturnal Agreement and the Skeleton Key. The Thieves Guild's implausible streak of luck, their ability to pull off jobs that should have failed, Their resilience as an organization across decades of pressure from city guards and imperial law has a supernatural explanation. Nocturnal, the Daedric Prince of Night and Luck, has an agreement with the guild. Her artifact, the skeleton key, was kept in the guild's possession, and while it was there, Nocturnal's blessing extended over all of their operations. When Mercer Frey stole it, the luck vanished. Jobs started going wrong. Members started dying. The guild that had thrived despite itself began to fall apart. Restoring the key, which is what the questline ultimately requires, is not about recovering a powerful item. It is about fulfilling a religious obligation to the divine patron who made the guild's success possible. The Thieves' Guild is a religious institution whose faith manifests as breaking and entering. Easter egg number 105, Cicero's costume and what it cost. We've established that Cicero killed a jester and then became one, to some degree, but the specific jester costume, the red and yellow, the bells, the motley, is not arbitrary. The jester tradition has a specific historical resonance. Court jesters were figures who were allowed to say things that others could not, protected by their role as entertainers, capable of speaking truth from behind a mask of humor. Cicero, who knows things about the Brotherhood that he cannot say directly, who serves an authority structure that has been corrupted in ways he cannot address head-on, adopted the costume that permits indirect speech. His madness is real, but so is the calculation inside it. He says more than he should be able to say, and the bells provide a kind of cover. Easter egg number 106, the Black Sacrament's selectivity. The ritual to contact the Dark Brotherhood, arranging an effigy of the intended victim, anointing it, chanting the incantation with genuine intent, functions as a self-selecting filter. The Brotherhood does not advertise. They do not take out contracts. People who want someone dead badly enough to learn this specific ritual, to obtain the specific materials, to perform it with genuine conviction and intent, have demonstrated through the performance itself that they are serious. A law enforcement agent attempting to trap the Brotherhood would have to perform a ritual designed to genuinely summon assassins, which is not something institutional organizations do comfortably. The Black Sacrament ensures that every client is already halfway committed before first contact. Aventus Aretino, the small boy in Windhelm who performs the ritual to get Grelod the Kind killed, has been doing it for weeks. He stole his mother's remains for the materials. He has been in that room alone in the dark, chanting, because the adults in his life either couldn't help him or wouldn't. The Brotherhood heard him. The game asks you to think carefully about what it means that a child summoning assassins was the only solution that worked. Easter egg number 107, the Companions' genocidal origin. The Companions are among the most respected organizations in Skyrim. They are honorable warriors, principled in ways that other factions often aren't. Their headquarters, the Companions' Hall Jorvaskar, is built from an ancient longboat that Isgramor's followers dragged inland and built their first settlement around. But Isgramor's followers were originally organized for a specific purpose, not as mercenaries, not as neutral contractors. They were organized to exterminate the Snow Elves in retaliation for the Night of Tears massacre at Sarthal. The Companions began as a genocide force. Their traditions and oaths predate their existence as a neutral party by a considerable margin. The organization evolved over millennia into something honorable. The question of what that means, whether evolution is sufficient, whether an institution's original purpose casts a permanent shadow over what it becomes, is not one the game answers. Easter egg number 108, Maven Black Briar is already running Riften. The Jarl of Riften is a woman named Layla Lawgiver. She gives laws and rulings and sits in the keep and acts like the person in charge. Maven Blackbriar is in charge. Maven owns the meadery that employs much of the city. Maven has an established relationship with the Thieves' Guild. Maven has leverage over every significant person in the city, including the Jarl's own steward. She does not have a title. She does not need one. If the Imperials win the Civil War, she is appointed Jarl, and the game presents this as a political reward. What it actually is a formalization. The title is being given to the person who has always held the authority. Nothing is changing except the paperwork. Easter egg number 109, the Morag Tong was first. The Dark Brotherhood, with its sophisticated rituals and theology and secrecy, is actually a younger organization than the Morag Tong, the Assassin's Guild of Morrowind. The Morag Tong is legally sanctioned by the Tribunal Temple, which means they perform religiously mandated killings within the framework of Dwemer law. They are the established institutional assassin structure. The Dark Brotherhood split from them, rejected the legal framework, and went underground to serve a theology that has nothing to do with institutional religion. What started as a schism became two completely different philosophies about what killing means and who has the authority to authorize it. The Brotherhood thinks about this differently than anyone who hasn't talked to enough of their members would expect. Easter egg number 110. The Khajiit caravans are intelligence networks. The Khajiit merchant caravans that camp outside city walls, selling goods and being refused entry to most cities because of anti-Khajiit discrimination, are observing everything they see. They move between every major city in Skyrim. They speak to everyone who comes to buy. They hear conversations. They note troop movements, political tensions, economic conditions. They report to Elswehr's leadership. Some of them distribute skooma, which creates dependent customers who will tell them things in exchange for supply. The commercial operation is real. But it is also, apparently, an intelligence network. The discrimination that keeps Khajiit outside city walls also keeps city officials from thinking of them as a threat or a source of information. The caravans are invisible in the way that people are invisible when the majority culture has decided not to take them seriously, and they use that invisibility deliberately. Easter egg number 111. The Spectral Assassin's Disturbance in the Void. Lucien Leconte, the Dark Brotherhood speaker from Oblivion, appears as a summonable ghost in Skyrim. He follows you around and comments on your activities. Sometimes he will say, "I feel a disturbance in the void," which is a play on a famous line from Star Wars about Force users feeling disturbances in the Force. It is also simultaneously appropriate within the Brotherhood's theology. Lucien is a being of the void, of Sithis, of the primal emptiness. If something is wrong in that framework, he would be the one to feel it. The Easter egg and the sincere lore point converge at exactly the same line. Easter egg number 112. The Shattered Family History of the Brotherhood in Cicero's Journals. The 4 journals in Cicero's quarters trace an arc that covers years. The first journal is professional, detached, the entries of a competent assassin doing competent work. As the pages progress, and the Cheydinhouse sanctuary empties around him, the entries become longer and stranger. He starts describing conversations with the Night Mother's corpse. He starts analyzing the quality of silence in different rooms. He invents philosophical frameworks for why the corpse not responding is actually a form of testing rather than evidence that the corpse cannot respond. By the 4th journal, he is writing poetry to Sithis. This is not played for laughs. It is one of the most convincing depictions of isolation-induced psychological deterioration in a major game, embedded in the journals of a character most players find merely annoying. Easter egg number 113. Astrid's tenets violation and its consequences. The Dark Brotherhood operates under 5 tenets that are absolute: no stealing from the Brotherhood, no killing a member of the Brotherhood, no betraying the Brotherhood to an enemy, no disobeying the Night Mother or the listener, no refusing a contract. These are not rules in the sense of suggestions. They are doctrine, and violation means death. Astrid, the leader of the Skyrim Sanctuary, violates the 3rd tenet directly by handing you to the Penitus Oculatus in exchange for immunity. The Brotherhood collapses. This is not presented as coincidence. The tenets existed for a reason, and Astrid, who spent years maintaining her own authority over the sanctuary in ways that were already bending doctrine, eventually snapped it entirely, and the organization suffered for it. Easter egg number 114. Nocturnal's Twilight Sepulchre and its Guardian Cycle. The Twilight Sepulchre, the shrine to Nocturnal hidden in the wilds of the Rift, is maintained by a guardian called the Pilgrim's Path, which is a series of trials that tests a guild member's dedication before allowing them access to the inner sanctum. The current guardian, Nystrom, was a former Thieves Guild member who allowed the sepulchre to be compromised. He is condemned to guard the entrance he failed to protect for eternity, or until another guild member can restore what he damaged. He is not angry about this. He is exhausted and old and sad, and he will help you if you can get past him because he would like very much for someone to fix what he broke. This is Nocturnal's particular kind of justice. Not punishment as suffering, but punishment as obligation, remaining in the place of your failure until someone else can clean it up. Easter egg number 115. The Companions and Political Neutrality as Tradition. Despite being the most powerful private military force in Skyrim, The companions have a standing policy of absolute political neutrality. They do not take sides in the civil war. They do not swear allegiance to jarls or emperors. They take individual contracts from anyone who can pay, which means they may fight for the empire on one job and a Stormcloak-adjacent client on the next. This is not ethical flexibility. It is a deliberate founding principle. The companions were created to fight for Skyrim, not for whatever government happened to be claiming authority over Skyrim at any given time. By remaining neutral, they ensure that whoever wins the civil war will still need the companions afterward. They are institutionally immortal because they have refused to define themselves by any specific political allegiance that could expire. Easter egg number 116, the face sculptor's secret nature. In the Ragged Flagon and Riften's Ratway, a character named Galathil will change your character's appearance for a fee. Cosmetic surgery essentially performed in the back of a criminal enterprise's home base. Galathil is pale. Her eyes glow very faintly. She responds to detect dead rather than detect life. She is a vampire who has built a career out of performing highly precise work that, in a non-supernatural context, would require surgical skill that humans simply don't develop to this level. Her vampirism is not presented as a threat or a plot point. The Thieves' Guild accepts her because she does excellent work and does not prey on members. She is simply an asset. As long as the quality remains high, her nature is someone else's problem. Section 9. The cosmology of small things, theological Easter eggs, Daedric implications, and the universe hidden in Skyrim's details. Skyrim's cosmology is built around a universe that is genuinely strange and internally consistent in ways that reward serious attention. The stars have a specific origin. The Daedric princes have specific domains that illuminate their artifacts and quests. The nature of divinity in Tamriel is messier and more interesting than any official religion wants to admit. Easter egg number 117. The stars are holes in reality. Nordic cosmology understands stars not as distant suns or burning spheres of gas, but as punctures in the fabric of Mundus, the mortal world. When the original divine beings, who contributed pieces of themselves to creating the mortal world, realized the cost of creation, that they were losing divine power with every moment they remained, they tore themselves through the fabric and escaped to Aetherius, the divine realm beyond. The holes they left are what we see as stars. The sun is the largest one. Regular stars are smaller punctures. The light that bleeds through them is magical energy from Aetherius, which is why starlight and sunlight in the Elder Scrolls universe carry a fundamentally different quality than light produced artificially. This means every night sky in Skyrim is a gallery of exits. Every star is a place where something divine abandoned creation. The light they give off is the residue of that departure. And Magicka, the fundamental resource of all magical practice in Tamriel, flows into the mortal world through these same holes. The magic system is literally powered by the absence of gods who left. Easter egg number 118. Meridia was not always what she is. Meridia, the Daedric prince of life and light who gifts you the sword Dawnbreaker for clearing her temple, is generally considered one of the less malevolent Daedric princes. Her hatred of undeath aligns conveniently with mortal interests, but she was not originally a Daedric prince at all. She was one of the Magna Gae, the divine beings who fled creation in the Exodus described in the previous Easter egg. The difference is that she chose to remain involved with the mortal world rather than disappearing entirely. Other deities considered this aberrant enough that she was eventually cast out, becoming neither Aedra nor traditional Daedra, a being without a clean category. Her hatred of undeath is personal. It comes from having been part of the force that created life and finding necromancy and vampirism to be a specific kind of desecration. She is the only Daedric prince whose gifts come from what seems like genuine conviction about good and evil rather than self-interest. Her methods are still ruthless, and her gifts come with expectations of service. But the motivation underneath it is different. Easter egg number 119. Hermes Mora is the most patient threat. Hermes Mora, the Daedric prince of knowledge and fate, maintains an infinite library called Apocrypha in his plane of oblivion. Every text ever written is there, and many that haven't been yet. He offers access to this library through black books that can be found throughout Soulstime. Reading them is extraordinary. The knowledge is real, and the power they grant is real. But Hermes Mora collects people the way other princes collect souls, not through force, but through the simple fact that scholars and mages will follow a trail of knowledge past every reasonable stopping point if they believe something important is waiting on the other side. By the time his readers realize they have been accumulating debt, it is generally already extensive. His patience is unlimited. He has been doing this since before the world was fully formed and has no reason to hurry. The Dragonborn DLC implies a connection between the player character and Mora that is never fully resolved, deliberately. The game does not tell you what your character agreed to. Some debts don't appear until they are due. Easter egg, number 120. Sheogorath might be someone you know. The Sheogorath you encounter during the Mind of Madness quest in the Pelagius wing of the Blue Palace is slightly different from the Sheogorath described in other Elder Scrolls lore. He references specific past events. He mentions Passwall, a location from the Shivering Isles expansion of Oblivion. He says that Sheogorath is a title that gets passed from me to myself. At the end of the Shivering Isles expansion, the player character mantled Sheogorath, performing the role so completely that reality accepted them as the genuine article. The Sheogorath in Skyrim, who is slightly more coherent than Divine Madness princes usually are, who makes pop culture references with suspicious awareness, might be a mortal hero of the Fourth Era, who became a god by acting like one long enough that the distinction stopped mattering. Easter egg number 121. Akatosh, Alduin, and Ariel are facets. The dragon god of time that the imperial religion calls Akatosh, the first dragon that the Nordic tradition understands as Alduin, and the elven time deity Oriel are separate theological frameworks pointing at the same underlying reality from different cultural angles. When Alessia established the 8 divines, she synthesized multiple traditions to create a unified religious identity for her new empire, and Akatosh was one of the products of that synthesis. The theological truth, as the Elder Scrolls lore understands it, is that divine reality does not conform to mortal categories. The same cosmic principle manifests differently depending on which community is doing the perceiving. None of the frameworks is wrong, exactly. None of them is complete. Easter egg number 122, the Wabajak's philosophy. Sheogorath's artifact, the Wabajak, is a staff that produces completely random effects when used. It might turn an enemy into a sweet roll, it might summon a hostile Dwemer, it might strike lightning, or turn a target into a pile of gold, or generate a rabbit, or do several of these things in sequence with no apparent pattern. The weapon is mechanically impractical for serious combat. It is also the most honest artifact in the game. Sheogorath is the Prince of Madness, which is the Prince of genuine unpredictability, of outcomes that don't follow from causes in the expected way. The Wabajak is not a failed weapon, it is a perfect weapon for the god who made it. The fact that it can't be relied upon is the point. Easter egg number 123. The Vermina connection to nightmares in Skull. In Dawnstar, the residents have been having nightmares for weeks. The Daedric quest attached to this takes you to Nightcaller Temple, where Vermina, the Prince of Nightmares and Psychological Terror, has been active. What most players don't explore carefully enough is the full scope of what Vermina's influence looks like when it runs unchecked in a community. The people of Dawnstar are sleep-deprived, irritable, confused, and starting to lose the boundary between their waking and dreaming experiences. This is presented as a quest problem with a quest solution. It is also a fairly precise description of what prolonged sleep deprivation does to human communities. Easter egg number 124. The Oblivion connection in the Atronach Forge. The Atronach Forge beneath the College of Winterhold requires a sigil stone, specifically the kind that powered Oblivion gates during the crisis that is the subject of the Elder Scrolls 4. The fact that one of these stones exists in Skyrim's college and has been incorporated into an ancient forge that predates the college itself means that someone, at some point before the Oblivion crisis, was working with exactly the materials that Oblivion gates would later use. Whether this is an implication that Mehrunes Dagon's influence on Tamriel is older than the events of Oblivion, or simply that the Atronach Forge was created with material from an earlier Oblivion incursion, is left to interpretation. Easter egg number 125. The Dwemer were a different people once. The dark gray skin and red eyes of the dark elves, which are their defining physical characteristics, are not original features of the elven people they descend from. The Chimere were golden-skinned elves who worshipped Daedric princes and were generally considered more conventionally beautiful by the standards of the era. When their leaders, the living gods of the Tribunal, murdered the Daedric lord Nerevar and stole divine power from the heart of Lorcan, Azura cursed the entire Chimere people, every one of them. Their golden skin became ash gray, their eyes became red, and all their descendants have been born this way since. This is presented in Skyrim through background lore and books, rather than through any quest or dialogue. The Dark Elves who live in Windhelm's Grey Quarter, who have been there for 200 years and face systematic discrimination, carry in their bodies the visible sign of their ancestors' crimes. They were changed, permanently and hereditarily, by a divine judgment directed at people they never knew. Easter egg number 126. The Amulet of Kings ended the Empire's magic. The amulet that all Dragonborn emperors wore was not merely symbolic. It maintained the magical barrier against oblivion established by Alessia in the First Era. When Martin Septim shattered it to stop Mehrunes Dagon's full manifestation at the end of the Oblivion Crisis, he ended the magical legitimacy of the Empire. Titus Mede, who rules during Skyrim's events, commands a purely secular political authority. The Empire lost its divine mandate the day the amulet broke, and this loss of mystical authority contributed directly to the weakness the Empire shows throughout Skyrim. The White Gold Concordat, the Stormcloak Rebellion, the Thalmor's growing confidence, these are all downstream consequences of Martin's sacrifice centuries before your story begins. Easter egg number 127. Sovngarde's stars are different. When you arrive in Sovngarde, the sky above you is not Tamriel's sky. The stars are arranged differently. The constellations follow different patterns. This is not a rendering error or a procedural detail. The afterlife has its own sky, reflecting that it occupies a cosmological position outside of normal mundus. The stellar differences are subtle enough that most players don't notice consciously, but they contribute to the pervasive sense that this place follows its own rules, that the physics here, even the visual physics, are not the same as the physics you came from. Easter egg number 128. The voice can control minds. The Bend Will Shout, available in the Dragonborn DLC, allows the Dragonborn to tame and ride dragons, to bend the will of Solstime's inhabitants, to exert direct control over other sentient beings' behavior. The Greybeards, as far as we know, are aware this application exists, and they do not teach it. This is not simply because it is Murok's shout and carries his corruption, it is because the Thuum, the voice that reshapes reality through sound, can reshape the reality of another person's will. The Greybeard philosophy of restraint exists in large part because the voice's full capabilities are so much more than weapons. They are tools for absolute coercion. Jürgen Windcaller, who founded the Way of the Voice, understood this and decided that a weapon capable of eliminating free will was too heavy to carry casually. Section 10. The Very Last Secrets, DLC Easter eggs, final discoveries, and the quiet endings. We are close to the end now. The fire has gotten a little lower. The snow is still falling. Let's spend the last stretch on the things tucked into Skyrim's furthest corners, the discoveries that require the most dedication, or the kind of patient wandering that only happens on a quiet night when you're not sure where you want to go. Easter egg number 129. The Bloodskull Blade's Lost Tradition. In Raven Rock Mine on Solstheim, you will find the Bloodskull Blade, a unique two-handed sword whose power attack produces a slash of energy that can be projected outward to hit enemies at range. It once belonged to warriors who settled Solstheim in the First Era, and its craftsmanship represents a tradition of warrior mages who combined physical combat with arcane effect, practitioners of a martial philosophy that has been almost completely abandoned by the Fourth Era. Nordic warriors now fight with strength, or with magic, but rarely with both simultaneously. The Bloodskull Blade is a relic of what combat looked like before the disciplines separated, and it is hidden in a mine on an island, found almost by accident, used by almost nobody. Easter egg number 130. The Forgotten Vale's Grief. The Forgotten Vale, accessible only through the Dawnguard questline, is the most architecturally beautiful location in the game. Frozen waterfalls, ancient Falmer stonework, ice formations that catch the light in ways that suggest something luminous lived here before the fall. This was the Snow Elves' sacred place, their sanctuary, preserved in its original form by the Vale's isolation. Walking through it after everything you've learned about what the Snow Elves became is a particular kind of experience. Gelibor, the guardian who has tended these spaces for thousands of years, will tell you about what used to happen here, who used to worship here, what the architecture was built for. None of it applies anymore. The worshippers are gone. The faith is gone. The beings who would have found this beautiful can no longer see it. You are the only person who has seen it as it was meant to be seen in a very long time. There is something heavy in being that witness. Easter egg number 131, the Crimson Nirnroot quest's actual purpose. Collecting 30 Crimson Nirnroot plants in Blackreach for Cindarion's colleague of Rusa Serethi is one of the most complained about quests in Skyrim. No quest marker, minimal guidance, a large area, a quota that requires methodical searching. What the quest is actually doing is forcing you to walk Blackreach completely, every corner of it, at its natural pace. The reward for this, Cindarion's Serendipity perk, is useful, but the real reward is that you cannot have rushed through Blackreach and also completed this quest. The developers built a mechanism for making players experience a location that took enormous work to create, by hiding the collectible throughout it and refusing to shortcut the process. The annoyance and the artistry are the same thing. Easter egg number 132, the Red Wave and its Oblivion connection. The Red Wave is a smuggling ship in Solitude's harbor. If you do the Thieves Guild questline, you will end up on it as part of a contract. But the ship's name and its narrative role are both callbacks to Oblivion, where a ship called the Red Wave appeared in a quest involving a Dark Brotherhood assassination and a vessel full of dead crew. Bethesda gave their Oblivion ship a Skyrim sequel with the same name, the same general occupation of supporting criminal enterprises, and the same tendency to become the scene of violence during quests. The ship survived 2 games and several decades of narrative time. It is the most consistent maritime presence in the franchise. Easter egg number 133, the Arvak quest's emotional design. The shade you encounter in the Soul Cairn, who asks you to find Arvak's skull, does not give you a reason to care about this task beyond a general sense that the shade is sad. The game doesn't tell you Arvak's story before you find him. What it does is stage the search itself so that finding the skull feels like discovery rather than completion, and returning it feels like a gesture of genuine kindness to a person the game has given you just enough time with to care about. Then you get a horse that comes when called from anywhere. The mechanical reward is intentionally designed to feel like a consequence of the emotional choice rather than the reason for it. You helped because the shade was sad, not because the reward was worth having. Easter egg number 134, the Ebony Blade's true nature. Mephalah's artifact, the Ebony Blade, grows more powerful with each act of betrayal that feeds it. Specifically, it requires that you murder people who trust you, people who consider you a companion or friend. The game tracks the relationships of NPCs who have been designated as favorable toward you, and those are the NPCs whose deaths feed the blade's enchantment. To fully charge the Ebony Blade, you must actively seek out people who like you and kill them. The game will do this. It will let you build the most powerful enchanted two-handed sword available. The cost is not just moral in an abstract sense. The game requires you to identify specific, named, friendly characters and make specific, deliberate choices to end them. The artifact is testing the player's relationship with the NPCs, the world built around them. Easter egg number 135, the Hearthfire adoption system and its hidden depth. In the Hearthfire DLC, which allows you to build homes and adopt children, there are a set of conversations that only happen if you are home with your children at the right times. Children who have been adopted from difficult backgrounds will occasionally, if you are sitting in the house with them and have developed a sufficient relationship, tell you fragments of where they came from, what life was like before. These conversations are short and are designed to be stumbled across rather than sought out. They give the adoption mechanic a weight that it would not otherwise have. You didn't just acquire a companion and a family modifier. You brought specific people out of specific bad situations, and they remember, even if they don't say so most of the time. Easter egg number 136, the Dragonborn DLC's Mora ending. The conclusion of the Dragonborn DLC's central questline involves defeating Marak in Apocrypha, Hermes Mora's domain. After Mirok falls, Mora speaks to you and suggests that your ability to reach and defeat his champion represents exceptional potential. He implies a future arrangement. The game does not specify what that arrangement is. Some players interpret the end of the questline as the Dragonborn entering Mora's service voluntarily. Some interpret it as a warning successfully deflected. The Dragonborn's ultimate fate, which is similarly unresolved in the base game's ambiguity about what happens to them after Alduin's defeat, may include a chapter that Mora is already reading in a library that contains texts that haven't been written yet. Easter egg number 137, the Stalrim's cultural weight. Stalrim, the icy material used for weapons and armor in the Dragonborn DLC, is sacred to the Skal people of Solstheim. They understand it as crystallized tears of their gods. Harvesting it without their permission is a form of spiritual violation, not just property crime. The Thalmor's attempt to steal the knowledge of Stalrim crafting represents a pattern of cultural imperialism that the game presents with unusual clarity. The Skal will teach you to craft Stalrim if you demonstrate respect and earn their trust. The Thalmor tried to extract the same knowledge through force and failed. The game rewards the respectful approach and punishes the extractive one, which is a more nuanced position on indigenous knowledge than most games achieve. Easter egg number 138, the poetic echo in Word of Power absorption. Every time you absorb a word of power, the brief visual effect, the golden light, the momentary stillness is accompanied by a whisper. Not a word, not dialogue. Something just below the threshold of language. Bethesda's audio team recorded and processed these sounds to be on the edge of intelligible, specifically so they would feel like meaning even when you cannot parse them. The dragon words are being absorbed by your body. Your body hears them differently than your mind does. The sound design is representing something that game engines don't normally have to model, the experience of knowledge entering you at a biological level rather than an intellectual one. Easter egg number 139. The Civil War has no good ending, by design. This is a design Easter egg rather than a content one. The Civil War questline in Skyrim does not have an outcome where Skyrim is clearly better off. An Imperial victory maintains the Talos ban and foreign oversight. A Stormcloak victory creates a weaker, isolated province that the Thalmor, who wanted this conflict to continue indefinitely, are better positioned to eventually absorb. Evidence in the Thalmor embassy suggests the Dominion's analysts predicted and encouraged both possibilities. The developers made a deliberate choice to create a major questline with two sides whose most articulate proponents both have valid points and whose most likely outcomes both have significant costs. Players who expect games to reward them for choosing correctly were designed to be disappointed here. The game is saying that some conflicts don't have correct answers. Some choices are between two bad outcomes that have to be weighed against each other in full awareness that neither is good. This is not a design failure. This is a design choice about the nature of political reality that very few games have the confidence to commit to. Easter egg number 140, Paarthurnax asks the real question. At the throat of the world, if you have not yet made a decision about Paarthurnax's fate, he will sometimes say something that functions as the game's deepest ethical inquiry. He tells you that what is important is not that he was once Alduin's lieutenant, that he helped enslave humanity for centuries. What is important is what he has chosen to do with the tens of thousands of years since. He asks you what you think, whether the weight of past crimes can be balanced by a sufficiently prolonged commitment to opposing them. The Blades want you to kill him on principle. He was a tyrant once. He should die for it. The Greybeards want you to spare him. He has spent longer atoning than most civilizations have existed. Neither perspective is dismissible. Bethesda did not write a game where the philosophy question has an answer. They wrote a game where the question keeps asking itself at the highest place in the world, in the voice of a dragon who has been alone with it for a very long time. The final Easter egg is not a pop culture reference or a developer joke. It is a question about whether redemption is possible and whether the duration of honest effort can eventually outweigh the nature of what required that effort. Skyrim hides this question at the top of its tallest mountain. You can go there without a quest. You can simply climb and stand at the summit and think about it. The fire has burned low now. The 140 things we have walked through tonight, from the whale bones in a Dwemer trap to the question at the top of the world, are all still there, sleeping in Skyrim's code. waiting for someone patient enough to find them. That's the thing about this game. It rewards patience. It rewards the walk that doesn't go anywhere in particular. It rewards reading the journal in the corner that nobody told you to read. The world of Skyrim is more attentive to you than it usually gets credit for. The developers left notes everywhere, and some of those notes say funny things, and some say deeply melancholy things, and some say things that don't have a clear meaning at all. The best ones are the ones that just sit quietly and let you bring what you already have to them. Thank you for spending this time with me, Cozy Knights. If you made it this far, if these 140 secrets carried you somewhere comfortable, then I am genuinely glad. Drop a like if this helped you sleep, drop a comment telling me your favorite one, and if you want to hear more nights like this one, a subscribe is the only thing I ever truly need from you. Take care of yourselves out there. And if you pass through Skyrim, take a moment at the summit before you come back down. The view from up there is worth the climb. Sleep well.